He was running out of time long before the morning even began. He just didn't know the world was about to test him in a way that would rewrite his entire life. Some people lose opportunities because they are careless. Some lose them because life keeps knocking them down. But Malik Turner was about to lose the biggest chance he'd ever had, for a reason no one could have predicted. A reason that would reveal who he truly was when no one was watching. Malik had no alarm clock in the small borrowed room where he slept. He always woke before the sun rose. Years of doing whatever work he could find had trained his body better than any device ever could. He pushed himself up from the thin mattress, laid across the floor of a neighbor's storage room. The room smelled faintly of dust and detergent. It wasn't home. It wasn't comfortable. But it was safe, and for someone who had spent the last 8 months drifting between friends, cousins, and shelters, safety felt like a gift. This morning mattered more than any other. It carried the weight of survival. It carried the hope of starting over. It carried the fear of what would happen if he failed again. He kept reminding himself that he only needed one chance. Just one employer willing to look past the gaps in his history. Just one person willing to see the man he was, not the mistakes he carried. He stood quietly, taking in a slow breath as if he needed to gather the pieces of himself before stepping into the day. The air was cool. The silence was heavy enough to feel. But Malik moved with purpose. He turned on the stove and placed an old metal kettle over the flame. There was no coffee inside. He wasn't making a drink. He was making steam. The steam was how he pressed the one shirt he owned that looked even close to professional. A faded white button-up. Sleeves slightly uneven. Collar softened from years of wear. A missing button on the left wrist that he kept hidden by folding the cuff inward. He lifted the shirt to the kettle's steam and smoothed the wrinkles with careful hands. The warmth spread across his palms, steadying him. He needed this shirt today. He needed to look like someone worth believing in. He never complained about what he didn't have. Complaints didn't fill out job applications. Complaints didn't get interviews. Complaints didn't erase the months of his resume swallowed by grief, loss, and the kind of hardship he rarely talked about. He pressed each crease with quiet patience. Then he slipped into his shoes, a pair of worn brown loafers with cracks along the sides. He rubbed a little cooking oil across them until they held the faintest shine. Enough to look intentional, he stared at himself in a small mirror hanging crooked on the wall. Eyes tired, jaw tense, but determined. Interview at 10. Don't mess this up, he whispered the reminder under his breath. More promise than instruction. By 7:40. He stepped outside with a half-eaten cereal bar in his pocket and $5 in coins borrowed from Mr. Ramsey downstairs. An older man who lived alone and spent his evenings listening to jazz loud, enough for the whole building to hear. Malik promised he'd pay him back. As soon as he got the job, the morning streets of Easton City were still waking up. Delivery trucks rattled down the road. A few storefronts rolled open their shutters. The sky was a deep gray blue, holding on to the last bit of night. Malik walked with his shoulders square. He had read somewhere that how you carry yourself matters more than what you wear. So he carried himself like he belonged in the world. Like he had something to offer. Like he wasn't drowning under the pressure of starting from zero again. He took the bus halfway, then walked the last mile to clear his mind. A chance to rehearse his answers. What are your strengths? I show up. I learn fast. I don't waste chances. What is your biggest weakness? I try to handle everything alone. Why do you want this job? Because I'm ready to build a life I can respect. The office building came into view around 9:25. Glass windows. Modern edges. Sterling Group. Easton Division. Not a skyscraper, but polished enough to feel intimidating to someone who never worked in a place with its own elevator. Malik took a breath and stepped closer. That's when everything changed. A woman stood near the crosswalk, well-dressed, poised, holding a leather bag in one hand and a fresh cup of tea in the other. At first glance, she looked calm, collected, and entirely in control. but her right heel was trapped in a narrow crack between two slabs of sidewalk. She tugged once. Then again, the heel wouldn't move. Cars passed a little too close. Someone honked irritably. A few pedestrians stared but kept walking. She looked around, trying to hold her composure, but panic pushed at the edge of her expression. Malik slowed. He felt his phone buzz in his pocket. A reminder about the interview. He didn't check it. He looked at the woman again. He looked at the building across the street. He knew exactly how little time he had. And then he made a choice. "Are you all right?" he asked. It gently as he crouched down without waiting for permission. The woman flinched slightly, surprised. Up close, she looked even more polished than before. Short dark hair. Subtle makeup. A navy coat that probably cost more than everything Malik owned. She tried to smile through her embarrassment. "I'm stuck. I don't even know how this happened. It's all right." He steadied the shoe and tried easing the heel free. The crack was deeper than it looked. The shoe was wedged tight. A thin strip of the sole had already begun to peel. She sighed quietly. "I just bought these," he grinned. "I've had these shoes since high school. Can't imagine going through 5 pairs a season." She gave him a look, somewhere between amused and frustrated. "Are you in a rush?" Her voice held curiosity. It's not accusation. Malik hesitated. Yes, but he didn't say it. Instead, he answered with the truth that felt right in that moment. "Not leaving you stuck here." He twisted the heel again. A little pressure. A controlled pull. It popped free. She stumbled, catching her balance with a hand on his shoulder. He steadied her. "There you go." Safe and standing. She looked genuinely relieved. "Thank you. Seriously, you saved me from showing up barefoot. That would be memorable. But maybe not ideal." She laughed. "What's your name, Malik?" "Malik Turner." "Well, Malik Turner, I owe you one." She glanced at her watch and her expression shifted. "I'm late." Then she hurried off toward the opposite direction. Disappearing into the morning flow, Malik finally checked the time, 9:57. His chest tightened. He ran across the street. He ran into the building. He ran with every bit of hope he had left. But hope wasn't enough. "Hi, I'm here for the 10 o'clock interview. Name's Malik Turner." The receptionist scanned her screen with a calm expression. "I'm sorry, Ms. Cole. Only stayed until 10. She stepped out 5 minutes ago." Malik stood still. He nodded once. Forcing a polite smile, he didn't feel. "Thank you." He walked out slower than he walked in. The world felt louder. The sun felt harsher. His hands felt empty. Maybe I ruined my only chance. Maybe I shouldn't have stopped. Maybe she didn't even need me. The thoughts pressed on him as he sat on a bench near the building. He stared at his folder. All the preparation. All the hope. Resting quietly on his knees, he sat long enough that the shade moved away from him. Long enough for doubt to settle in his stomach like a stone. Eventually he stood. He bought a bottle of water and a cheap sandwich with the last of his coins. He walked back to the storage room he borrowed each night. He nodded at Mr. Ramsey asleep in his chair. And he told his friend later that evening that the interview went fine, because pretending things were okay. It felt easier than explaining the truth. But the truth wasn't done with him. Not yet. The next morning he checked his email. Nothing. The day after that. Still nothing. He told himself to move on. He tried searching for warehouse jobs, cleaning shifts, anything steady. Then on Thursday, his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello," a smooth voice replied. "Is this Malik Turner speaking?" "This is Dana, assistant to Ms. Evelyn Cole. She would like to reschedule your interview for tomorrow at 9 in the morning. She will conduct it personally." Malik forgot how to breathe for a second. She wants to meet. Meet, that is correct. "Is that time good for you?" "Yes." "Yes, absolutely. We look forward to seeing you." The call ended. Mr. Ramsey, half awake, raised an eyebrow. "Something happened." Kid Malik smiled for real. "I think something just changed." He didn't know how much. Not yet. But everything was about to begin. Malik barely slept that night. Not because of fear this time, but because his mind kept replaying the moment the call came. He lay awake on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering why Ms. Cole wanted to meet him personally. He wondered if she remembered him. He wondered if helping her had meant more than a quick moment on the sidewalk. Every time he closed his eyes, saw her expression when her heel came loose. Relief, embarrassment fading into gratitude, and then the way she vanished without waiting for conversation. A woman who moved with purpose. A woman used to being in control. He woke before dawn and re-ironed his shirt using steam from a pot this time. Since the kettle sputtered out after years of use, he polished his shoes again and stitched the cuff one more time with the tiny kit he borrowed from the laundry shop down the block. He wanted to walk into that building prepared. He wanted to walk in looking like someone who deserved a chance. His friend Devin offered him a ride. "No way you're taking the bus today? This is serious." Malik didn't argue. The car smelled faintly of air freshener and old fast food wrappers. But it felt like luxury compared to getting jostled around on a city bus. When they pulled up outside the building at 8 o'clock, Malik felt the same mix of nerves and determination that had followed him for months. But today he kept his head high, shoulders steady. He walked through the glass doors with a quiet confidence he hadn't felt the first time. The receptionist looked at him differently now. Not cold, not dismissive, almost curious. "You can go up to the 6th floor." Her eyes lingered for a moment, as if she already knew something he didn't. He took the elevator up. It moved faster than he expected. He checked his breath, wiped his palms on his slacks once, knocked on the office door. "Come in." He stepped inside and stopped. It was her, the woman from the sidewalk, the one whose heel he'd freed, the one he had helped without thinking. She sat behind a sleek desk, calm as always. She removed her glasses and smiled. "I was hoping it was you." She stood and extended her hand. "I didn't know your name that morning, but I remembered you." Malik took her hand. It was steady, warm, confident. He tried to speak and finally managed something close to a sentence. "You're Ms. Cole. Call me Evelyn." She motioned for him to sit. He lowered himself into the chair, still stunned. Everything in him wanted to ask why she hadn't said anything that morning. Why she had let him run into the interview late. Why she seemed so calm about it now. Instead, he kept quiet. He wanted to hear her first. "I was late to a meeting that day." She folded her hands thoughtfully. "And when I walked into the building, I saw you on the security cameras at the front desk. Out of breath, sweaty, trying not to panic. And something about that stuck with me." Malik swallowed once. "Not the impression I was hoping to make. You made the right one." Evelyn leaned forward. "You helped someone in need when you had something important on the line. Most people don't do that." He didn't know what to say, so he waited. She watched him, studying every small shift in his expression. "I've interviewed more candidates for this program than I can count. Most walk in with perfect answers and perfect shoes. Very few show genuine character." She gestured toward the laptop on her desk. "I want you to tell me about yourself." "Not your resume, you?" Malik took a breath, unsure where to start. He began with his childhood in Ridgeway. How he grew up with a hard-working mother who raised him alone. How he dropped out of community college after she passed, not because he wanted to, but because the bills wouldn't wait. How he took whatever jobs he could find. How he kept falling behind no matter how hard he pushed. How he ended up staying in borrowed rooms and spare corners for nearly a year. How he wanted to start again. How he needed this chance. Evelyn listened without interrupting. She didn't take notes. She didn't glance at her watch. She just listened, eyes steady, expression calm. "Have you worked with data a little?" "I taught myself spreadsheets. Budget stuff. I made a mock-up tool for tracking grocery prices. Tried to pitch it once. Didn't go anywhere." "Show me." He blinked. Now, he hesitated. I don't have my laptop." She pushed one across the desk. "Use this." His fingers shook slightly as he typed. But once he got into it, muscle memory took over. He opened emails where he'd saved screenshots. He explained formulas. He talked her through every small feature he had built. The room felt strangely peaceful as he spoke. When he finished, he sat back, unsure what she was thinking. Evelyn closed the laptop softly. "You built all that alone, yes? No training, just trial and error." "Good," she stood. "That'll be all for today." He froze. No offer, no rejection. Just a simple ending. He walked out of the office feeling unsteady, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. He didn't know if he impressed her or simply confused her. He didn't know if she saw potential or just a project. He didn't know anything except that something about this woman felt unpredictable. Devin picked him up 20 minutes later, while Malik stared ahead. "I don't know, man. I can't tell if she liked me or if she just took notes for later." He spent that night replaying their conversation in his head. Every look, every question, every silence. But none of it answered the only question that mattered. Why did she bring him back? Morning came fast. His phone buzzed just after breakfast. A new email. Simple and direct, Ms. Cole would like you to return Thursday at 1. Bring nothing. He read it again and again. Bring nothing. It sounded less like an interview and more like a summons. He arrived early on, Thursday, and waited in the lobby with nerves that tightened and loosened with every passing minute. At exactly 1 o'clock, the elevator chimed. Dana stepped out and nodded toward him. This way, but she didn't lead him back to the same office. She led him to a conference room he hadn't seen before. Glass walls. Long table. 3 people already seated, and Evelyn at the head of the table. "Come in." Her voice carried confidence without pressure. "Take a seat." He sat straight, hands resting on his legs. "This is not an interview." Her tone shifted slightly. Carrying weight, one of the men glanced at Malik. "We asked Evelyn to bring forward someone with quick judgment. Someone who understands pressure. Someone who has already shown leadership without a title. She told us she had someone in mind." Malik swallowed, eyes on Evelyn. "You helped me when you didn't know who I was. You've kept calm. You stayed kind. People underestimate how rare that is." Another woman across the table leaned forward. "We run community initiatives across the city. We're expanding. We need people who understand struggle and responsibility at the same time. So is this a job? Not exactly?" Evelyn clasped her hands. "It's a 30-day placement. You'll work with our community operations director. If it goes well, we bring you on full-time." Malik let the words sink in. It wasn't secure. It wasn't guaranteed. But it was a door, a real one. A chance no one had ever offered him before. "I'll do it. Whatever you need, good." Evelyn stood and extended her hand. "Report Monday morning. Building C back entrance. 8 sharp." He shook her hand again, feeling the weight of the moment settle inside him. He stepped out of the conference room feeling like he'd been handed something fragile and priceless. Something he wasn't allowed to drop. Not even once. He didn't know someone in that room had already decided to make it difficult for him. And he didn't know how far that person was willing to go. The real test hadn't even begun. Malik woke before sunrise on Monday, not because he was anxious, but because something inside him felt alive for the first time in years. The 30-day placement wasn't a job. It wasn't stability. But it was a door cracked open. And a cracked door was more than he'd had in a long time. He put on clean jeans, plain charcoal tee, and his freshly shined loafers. The email had said dress ready to move. He didn't know what that meant. But he was determined not to show up underdressed or overwhelmed. He tucked a small notebook in his pocket. Devin handed him a granola bar for luck. Then Malik walked the final block to building. See, the place looked nothing like the polished corporate tower where he met Evelyn. Building C sat behind the main campus, near the loading docks. Weathered bricks. Old metal awnings. A single glass door with a taped sign that read, "Community Operations." He stepped inside and found a wide room filled with long folding tables. Stacks of donated supplies, clipboards, bins of clothing, and posters advertising food drives. It felt less like a corporate office and more like a community center run on heart instead of money. A woman with auburn curls pulled into a messy bun stood behind the front table, scribbling notes on a clipboard. She wore work boots, jeans, and a faded polo shirt with the company's community logo. "You must be Malik." Her voice was warm but carried authority. "I'm Lena, Community Operations Director." He shook her hand. "Nice to meet you. Welcome to the part of the company that gets none of the funding but all of the problems." She grinned. "Don't worry. You'll get used to it." He smiled back. "What's today look like everything?" She pointed around the room. "Sorting clothes, callback lists, supply runs, school partnerships, preparing for a senior meal drive, managing volunteers. And that's just the morning." She tossed him a pair of gloves. "Start here. Let's see how you work." They spent the first hour sorting jackets and shoes. Then they fielded calls from 2 local schools needing weekend meal packs. By noon, Malik was carrying folding tables to a community center 4 blocks away, sweating under the mild spring sun. By 3, he was scrubbing graffiti off a playground fence with a group of teenagers who alternated between complaining and laughing. None of it felt glamorous. None of it felt polished. But it felt real, and Malik found himself slipping into the work with a natural steadiness. Lena watched quietly. She didn't give praise. She didn't hover. She just observed, studying how he handled frustration, teamwork, and pressure. Every day that week was a new challenge. He learned to write grant updates. He learned to manage supply lists. He learned which neighborhoods trusted the company and which neighborhoods didn't trust anything at all. He learned how quickly people shut down when they sensed pity, and how quickly they opened up when treated like equals. By the second week, Lena trusted him enough to send him out alone. On Tuesday morning, she called from home, coughing into the phone. "You're running the prep meeting at River Haven Shelter. Don't just read off a checklist. Listen, talk to them." He headed there immediately. The shelter was busy. People paced the lobby. Volunteers rushed between rooms, and the director looked overwhelmed. But Malik focused on the shelter residents first. He shook every hand, asked every name, listened to every complaint without brushing any aside. He spent half an hour talking to a man named Carl who worked night shifts and lost half his pay because he missed one shift while sick. He listened to a young woman juggling 2 kids and trying to finish her. Ged. He listened to a quiet boy, older than 19, who admitted he didn't know where he'd go if the shelter ever asked him to leave. When the meeting ended, Malik stayed to help wipe down tables and reorganize the sign-in board. He caught the bus back to Building C, feeling tired but strangely fulfilled. He didn't tell Lena about the conversations. He didn't think they counted as accomplishments. He just thought they were the right thing to do. The next morning, he walked into a room he didn't expect to see. Roderick Hale sat at the front table, the same man from the earlier round table, the one whose expression never warmed. The one who made Malik feel evaluated rather than seen. Roderick tapped a folder with 2 fingers. "Sit," Malik sat. "You're here because Evelyn sees something in you." Roderick leaned back. "That doesn't mean you're ready." Malik stayed silent. "What you're doing now is easy. Showing up, lifting boxes, smiling. Anyone can do that." Roderick's tone sharpened. "What happens when things get complicated, when someone pushes back when the rules don't?" Ben Malik held his gaze. "I adapt, and I don't quit." Roderick studied him for a long second. "We'll see." Malik left the room with a knot in his stomach. He didn't understand why Roderick seemed determined to doubt him, but he knew this trial wasn't going to stay simple. The next morning, things got messy fast. Lena was still out sick. A junior coordinator named Travis sat behind the front desk, tapping through his phone with the energy of someone who always had somewhere better to be. River Haven Shelter called. Travis didn't even look up from his screen. "They said they need extra help again, and they asked for you specifically." Malik grabbed a supply kit and made the 30-minute trip across town. When he arrived, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Residents paced in the hallway. A few whispered among themselves. The lobby felt tense enough to make his chest tighten. Carl stood near the vending machine, shaking his head. "Carl, what's going on here? Talking about kicking out 3 people. Carl rubbed his beard. "Missing paperwork," they said. But those forms never reached them. Not once. Who said they never got the forms? A new admin. Back office. She's stressing and doesn't really know anyone. Yet Malik didn't want to step into conflict that wasn't officially his to handle. But watching fear spread across the shelter felt wrong. He knocked on the admin office door. A young woman with a stern face looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "Heard some residents are being asked to leave over missing paperwork. They didn't file there. Eligibility updates last month. No form, no stay. It's policy." Were the forms handed out? She sighed, irritated by the question. If it's not in the file, it didn't happen. He walked back to the hallway and found the 3 residents. An older man with a limp, a mother trying to calm her to small children, a teenager hugging his backpack tightly. Fear lived in all their faces. "You don't have to leave yet," he said it firmly. "Let me check something," he called Lena. Her voice crackled with exhaustion and fever. "Check the old logs. Back office. Bottom drawer. If the forms were distributed, they'll be signed." Malik searched the drawer until he found a dusty logbook buried under outdated pamphlets. He flipped to March. 3 names. 3 blank signatures. Forms never printed. He took pictures, printed copies, brought them straight to the admin. She stared at the evidence with wide eyes. "I didn't know you do now." By noon, the residents had an extension, updated forms, and a place to stay. Carl clapped Malik on the back. "Man, you're something else." "We need people like you," Malik smiled, but he didn't rush to tell anyone. He didn't do it for credit. He did it because turning away would have been wrong, but someone else noticed. 2 days later, Evelyn called him into her office. "Tell me what happened at the shelter on Tuesday." He sat across from her, steady. "They were going to remove people over missing forms. The forms were never given out. I checked. That's it. You didn't tell Lena. You didn't tell Travis. You didn't tell me. I didn't think I needed to. That's what impressed me." Her eyes softened. "Most people report every small thing to look useful. You handled it quietly because you cared about the people affected." He didn't know what to say, so he waited. "I didn't bring you here out of charity. You're here because you understand the heart of this work, and I want to show you something." What came next would change everything he thought he knew about his future. Evelyn handed him a folder without saying a word at first. Malik opened it slowly, expecting another routine assignment or maybe an evaluation sheet. But what he saw inside made him stop breathing for a moment. Blueprints, grant outlines, partnership proposals, a full plan for a brand new citywide initiative, Lift Easton. The title sat bold at the top of the first page. He looked up at her, confused. "What is this?" Evelyn rested a hand on the desk, her expression calm but serious. "This is the biggest project we've launched in years. A complete rebuild of our community support system. Job training, housing support, mentorship, technology access, partnerships with schools, shelters, clinics, and local businesses." Malik flipped through the pages slowly. The scale of it overwhelmed him. "Why are you showing this to me?" "Because I want you in the room." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't soften. It carried purpose. And that made his heart thump hard against his ribs. He hesitated. "You mean the meeting's all of it? You're going to learn how a project like this is built from the ground up. Strategy, funding, community, planning, execution. You'll be right beside the team shaping it. And if all goes well, I want you ready for something bigger." He stared at her, unsure if he was hearing her right. "Me for leadership, not now, not tomorrow, but one day." Her tone left no room for doubt. He felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was more than a placement, more than a second chance. It was a future he'd never imagined someone would offer him. But before he could speak, Evelyn said something unexpected. "There's one thing you need to understand. Not everyone here believes you belong. Some will say it quietly. Some won't say it at all, but you'll feel it. She moved around the desk and leaned against its edge. When people underestimate you, they reveal their own limits, not yours. Her words hit him deeper than he expected. He didn't know whether to thank her or sit in silence. So he did both. He nodded, swallowed hard, and whispered, "I won't waste this." "Good. We start Monday. Come prepared. Bring your thoughts. Bring your questions." As he left her office, the weight of what she told him settled in. He had something rare now. A chance to matter. A chance to build something. A chance to become someone he never thought he could be. But he wasn't the only one preparing for Monday. Someone else had already decided his rise needed to stop, and they were looking for the first crack in his past. Monday came with a crisp morning wind that pushed through the city streets. Malik walked through the main entrance for the first time. Not the back door of Building C. He wore thrift store slacks Lena helped him pick out, a navy shirt pressed neatly, and the same loafers. Polished as best as they could be, he no longer felt like a visitor. He felt like someone on the edge of opportunity. The planning meeting took place in a large West Wing conference room. Glass walls, a long table, views of the city skyline stretching across the windows. Evelyn stood at the front beside a projector, guiding the room through the early framework for Lift Easton. The team was larger today. Department heads, financial officers, community liaisons, strategists, and Roderick. Hale, he sat near the center of the table with the confident posture of a man who believed he owned the room. He didn't look at Malik when he entered. Just tapped his pen and kept his eyes forward. Malik took a seat near the back, opened his notepad, and listened carefully. Evelyn explained the vision for the program. A two-pillar foundation. Employment support and housing stability. A partnership with local schools and shelters. Access to mentorship networks. She paused, then turned to the room. And Malik will be joining these meetings from now on. His work in the community has already shaped part of our direction. The room shifted. Some raised brows. Some brief nods. Roderick tapped his pen harder. When open discussion began, Malik stayed quiet at first. He wanted to understand the room's rhythm. Who spoke with confidence? Who spoke with caution? Who spoke to be heard rather than to help? Then the conversation shifted to field engagement. How to build trust with overwhelmed communities. How to show consistency instead of promises. Malik cleared his throat. "May I say something?" The room paused. Evelyn gave a nod. "If we treat this like a project with bullet points and deadlines, people won't trust it." He glanced around the table. They've seen that before. What they need is presence. Not for a week. For months. Until showing up feels normal. A woman across the table nodded thoughtfully. Another wrote something down. Roderick finally spoke. "Presence is not enough. We have budgets and timelines. We can't build the entire program around soft promises. Then we're building something fragile." Malik's voice stayed level. "Something that collapses the moment we step away." Roderick's eyes narrowed a fraction. But Evelyn smiled, just slightly. "That's exactly why he's here." The room moved on. But the tension lingered. After the meeting, as people filed out, Roderick approached Malik near the coffee station. "You're stepping into deep water." His tone was low but sharp. "Evelyn may see something in you now, but people forget their favorites quickly." Malik met his eyes. Maybe they forget because they weren't favorites for the right reasons. Roderick's jaw tightened. He tapped his coffee cup once and walked away with a cold smile. Malik didn't tell Evelyn, didn't tell Lena, didn't tell anyone. He wasn't here for politics. He was here for the work. The next week passed in a blur. He attended budget meetings and learned how money moved through departments. He visited neighborhoods to map out where internet hotspots were needed most. He wrote drafts for mentorship plans. He stayed late rewriting the intake forms to make them clearer for first-time applicants. He found himself growing more confident, standing straighter, breathing easier, believing, maybe for the first time, that he could belong in rooms like these. But one evening, Everything shifted. He returned to Building C after a long day, keys in hand, planning to drop off signed partnership forms before heading home. The hallway was quiet. His desk sat in its usual corner, and on it, a plain white envelope. No name. No label. He opened it. Inside was a printed copy of an old court record. A parking violation that snowballed. A suspended license. A brief night in holding after a misunderstanding during a delivery job. He froze. Someone had dug through his past. Someone had gone looking for something to use. Someone wanted to remind him that he didn't belong. His jaw clenched. His hands tightened around the paper, but he didn't crumple it. He placed it back inside the envelope, took a breath, and went straight to Evelyn's office. She was there, heels off, reading a stack of proposals with a mug of chamomile beside her. She looked up. Everything all right. He set the envelope on her desk. She opened it. Didn't flinch. Didn't look surprised. I knew this would surface eventually. She closed the file calmly. HR flagged it on day one. I overruled them. Why didn't you ask me about it? Because I care about who you are now. Not who you were on paper? He stared at her. He didn't expect that answer. She stood, walked to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a folder of her own. Let me tell you something. I nearly lost my first business at 24 because I co-signed a loan for someone who vanished. Debt collectors camped outside my office. I sat in court next to my mother praying. I wouldn't lose everything. She placed the folder beside his. You want to build something that matters, people will test your past. But your past is not what defines you. You do. He exhaled slowly. So what now? Now you keep working. And I'll find out who's trying to tear you down. The next morning, Roderick was reassigned. Not fired. Not confronted. Just quietly relocated to another division in another state. Evelyn never explained. Malik never asked. The message was clear enough. From there, everything accelerated. Lift Easton launched. Malik became assistant coordinator within 3 weeks. Full coordinator 3 months later. He met with city leaders, managed volunteer teams, returned to Riverhaven Shelter, not as a volunteer, but as a partner, shaping policy. One afternoon during a local interview, a reporter asked him what changed everything for him. He didn't hesitate. A stuck heel. People laughed softly, but Malik meant every word. After the camera shut off, he walked outside to the sidewalk where he first met Evelyn. The crack was still there. The same crack that had changed the entire course of his life. He stood still, letting the memory wash over him. He thought of Mr. Ramsey, of Devin, of Lena, of Carl, of everyone who had helped him in small, quiet ways. He thought of how kindness had changed his life long before leadership ever did. A pair of teenagers walked by, arguing loudly. One dropped a folder of papers. Without thinking, Malik bent down, gathered them up, and handed them back. Thanks, man. The kid flashed a quick smile. No problem, Malik. Continued walking. Helping someone when no one is watching, that was the real test all along. Malik walked back toward the office that afternoon with a calm steadiness in his chest. Not pride. Not comfort. Something deeper. A sense that he had crossed a line in his life where nothing could push him back into who he used to be. But the world wasn't done testing him. Not yet. The biggest challenge waited just ahead, hidden inside the very success he was building. By late summer, Lift Easton was no longer just a proposal or a cautious pilot. It was gaining momentum across the city. Shelters reported higher stability rates. More residents were entering job training programs. Schools noticed improvements in attendance for students who joined mentorship sessions. Community centers felt alive again with volunteers and resources. And Malik was at the center of all of it. His role expanded without ceremony. One day he was coordinating the volunteer teams. The next, he was reviewing budgets, meeting with local officials, representing the initiative in rooms he once thought he'd never step into. But growth always comes with pressure. There were delays in construction for a new training center. A partner organization clashed with the company over funding allocation. A group of volunteers quit suddenly over scheduling conflicts. Tensions rose between departments who wanted faster results and communities who needed slower patient support. And somewhere in the middle of all of it was Malik, running from meeting to meeting, returning phone calls late at night, balancing expectations that felt heavier each week. He never once complained. But Evelyn noticed the strain forming around his eyes. She noticed the way he stayed after hours. She noticed how he carried the weight of other people's lives without letting anyone carry even a fraction of his. On a Friday evening, long after most employees left, she found him sitting alone in the small community planning room. His hands rested on a stack of reports. His shoulders hunched slightly like the week had shaped him into a tighter version of himself. "You're here late again." Her voice softened the room instantly. There was still a lot to finish. He didn't look up at first. "We're behind schedule on the training center, and the North District is struggling to fill mentorship spots. I don't want anything slipping through the cracks." She stepped closer. "You're not supposed to carry this alone." He finally looked at her, exhaustion and determination mixed into one expression. "I just feel like, if anything falls apart, it'll be my fault." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Then she said something he didn't expect. "Come with me." He followed her through the quiet hallway, past locked offices, down a corridor he hadn't walked through before. At the end was an old security door with a keypad. She punched in a code. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a simple room. Not fancy. Not modern. A round table. A couple of chairs. A bulletin board filled with old photos of outreach programs from years ago. "Take a seat," he did. Evelyn sat across from him. "Malik, you need to understand something. You're not here to be perfect. You're here because you're real. Because you build trust where numbers alone can't. Because people listen to you." He lowered his head. "What if I'm not enough for this anymore? You're not supposed to be enough alone." "No one is." Silence sat between them, but not the heavy kind. The honest kind. She leaned back slightly. "Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. When you grow, people start expecting you to solve everything. And if you're not careful, you start expecting the same from yourself." He looked up. "What did you do when that happened to you?" She smiled in a tired, knowing way. "I learned to trust the people I trained. And I learned to trust myself enough to ask for help." He didn't know why, but those words loosened something tight in his chest. He released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Just as he began to relax, the door opened. Lena walked in. "I figured you'd be here." She dropped a folder on the table. "Malik, this is the latest breakdown of the training center issue. I think you're going to want to see this." He opened the folder. His heart stopped. The holdup wasn't a scheduling delay or a budget miscalculation. It was sabotage. Someone had blocked a key approval by filing the wrong documents intentionally, not accidentally. Not incompetently, deliberately. Malik looked up. "Who did this?" Lena crossed her arms. "Someone who didn't want this project to succeed. Someone who didn't want you to succeed." Evelyn's jaw tightened. Her voice lowered. "I have a guess." Malik felt anger simmer, but he kept his voice steady. "What do we do now? We confront it, head on." But before he could respond, Lena opened a small envelope. "This was slipped under my door this morning. It's addressed to you." Malik opened it slowly, bracing himself, expecting another attack on his past, another attempt to pull him backwards. But inside was something else entirely. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was a message from someone inside the company who didn't sign their name. It read, "He's not trying to stop the project. He's trying to force you out. Be careful who you trust." Malik's breath caught. This wasn't about Lift Easton. This was personal. He closed the envelope, hands steady, even as his pulse raced. "Why would someone try to push me out?" His voice was quiet, but it shook with hurt he didn't want to show. Evelyn answered with a calm firmness that cut through the air. "Because you don't fit their picture of who deserves to lead. And rather than question that picture, they're trying to remove the part that challenges it." For the first time, Malik felt something he hadn't felt since all of this began. Not fear. Not doubt. Resolve. "So what now?" He asked it with a clarity that made both women straighten. Now Evelyn stood. "We show them exactly why you're here." Over the next week, the three of them worked like a single force. They tracked signatures. They fixed approvals. They held emergency meetings with partner organizations. They clarified roles. They rebuilt relationships that had been quietly damaged by misinformation. Malik spoke at community centers. He reassured workers who felt the project was stalling. He helped families fill out new forms. He trained new mentors personally. He stepped into every gap left open by the sabotage. And people noticed. Staff who barely knew him began asking for his input. Community leaders started calling him directly. Volunteers gathered around him with trust instead of hesitation. By the end of the week, the movement behind Lift Easton felt stronger than ever, and the person trying to break it found themselves exposed by their own actions. Roderick was removed quietly, not because of Malik, but because the truth eventually speaks for itself. The project moved forward faster than before. One crisp morning, months later, Malik stood on the steps of the new job training center as a crowd gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. He saw familiar faces everywhere. People who had walked beside him through doubt and hope. People who stood with him when others tried to pull him down. A reporter approached him again. "What do you think made this work?" Malik smiled. "People. Not perfect people. Not powerful people. Just people willing to help someone else without expecting anything back." Later that day, he walked alone toward the street where everything began. The same spot where he had once helped a woman whose name he didn't know. The same split in the sidewalk. The same crack that had trapped her heel and changed the direction of his life. He stopped for a moment and felt the weight of everything he had become. Everything he had survived. Everything he had built. He bent down, touched the edge of the crack gently, and stood again. A small moment. A small act. Yet it had shaped everything. He turned away, walking forward with steady steps. Because the truth he had learned echoed inside him with every breath. Doing the right thing isn't about being seen. Doing the right thing isn't about reward. Doing the right thing is how you become the person you are meant to be. And that was the part of the story that mattered most.